How's it going, AND Camp? This is Justin Gibney, president of the AND Campaign. And you know what it is. It's another civic update where we are trying to raise civic literacy among Christians so that as we go out and engage society as we should, we can do so in a more informed and effective manner. And as I say every week, it is so important that as we engage society, we understand the civic process, that we understand the issues, the most pressing issues of the day, and understand and have a grasp on the spirit of the day. If we're really going to be promoters of human flourishing and defenders of human dignity. And those are some things that the AND Campaign is very serious about. And we're trying to be a resource for you in that regard. Today, I want to talk about what some people are calling an attack on voter rights. You may or may not know that over 6 million people in the U.S. are barred from voting because of what some people call felony disenfranchisement laws. Now, whether a felon can vote or not is left up to the states. So there is no federal law that says people with prior felony convictions have to be able to vote or they can't vote. So different states have different laws in that regard, a different process that you may have to go through in that regard. Florida addressed this issue in November with Amendment 4. And what Amendment 4 did, it was a constitutional amendment that would automatically restore the voting rights of people who had prior felony convictions once they completed their sentence. Now, what you have to understand about completing your sentence, it means that you're no longer in prison and that you're no longer on parole or probation. Once you're through with all of that, you're considered to have completed your sentence, and under this amendment, you can have your voter rights restored automatically. All right. This was a major deal. Now, there's actually one exception, a couple exceptions. The only folks who had felonies who couldn't get automatically restored were people who were convicted of murder or felony sexual assault. So I do want to mention that there were those exceptions before I move on. But the measure was a big deal because it is going to re-enfranchise a million people, over 1 million people in Florida. So it would definitely have an impact on Florida's political landscape. And Florida was one of only, I think, 4 states that didn't automatically put folks back on the voter rolls once they completed their once they completed their sentence. I think the other states were Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee. Those were the states that didn't automatically place you back on the voter roll. So this was a big deal. The amendment passed by 65%. This isn't something that kind of eked by. It was clear that the voters were saying, we want these rights restored for people. Now, you would think it would be all good after that. The people voted, and so it's a done deal. But always remember that when you have a law or a policy that gets through, the implementation of that is almost as important as the law itself. How are you going to implement it, and also the enforcement of it? So what's happening now, and there's a big dispute between the parties, some Republicans are saying, well, it's fine that it passed, but in order to implement it, we need more direction. So we need some bills to go along with it to tell us exactly how to implement it. Now, the people who supported the amendment are saying that's just ridiculous. You guys are just trying to put up more obstacles in people's way, so all these million people don't automatically get restored. You think you may lose political, your political position or political capital because of this, and now you're just setting up more obstacles. So there's this big back and forth. Again, one side saying, well, in order to implement it, we need some other bills to add. We need to add some bills to it to give us direction. The others are saying, no, it's very clear as it is on the face of the amendment. It tells you exactly what this means, that it's automatic. So here's what one of the bills says. One of the bills says, so after somebody completes their sentence, they're not automatically put on there. What they're saying is you also have to pay all your fines and fees. And the tough part is these fines and fees aren't necessarily fines and fees that are related to that particular felony. So the people who are advocates for Amendment 4 are saying, why would we make people have to pay all this stuff if it's not even related to the felony which was keeping them from voting in the first place? Right? So that's the argument that people are having. And people are saying, well, this is an issue. Now, anybody who's been listening to the AND Campaign for a while knows that I am not a fan of putting extra burdens on poor people. I think in a lot of states and a lot of localities, there are too many fines and fees that come along with the criminal justice system. And, for somebody who isn't hurting financially, it may not be a big deal for you. But if you are hurting financially, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, every fine and every fee and every user fee that you have to pay is an extra burden that is holding you back from being, from financial health and a lot of other things. So anybody who listens to this knows that, the AND campaign says, yes, people need to be, punished when they commit a crime, when they do something against the state or do something against individuals. However, placing excessive fines or making everything about how much money you have is not the way to go. Let's put this in context. Do we want somebody to be held back from voting only because they didn't have the money to pay back a fine? Now, if it was connected to the felony, many people would say that would be understandable. But a lot of folks are saying, if it's not even connected to the felony, this is somewhat arbitrary, and it seems like you just don't want these people to have their voting rights restored. I'll let you be the judge of that, but it's a conversation that folks really need to have. These are a lot of people. This is a state that's behind in this regard. A lot of states have gone much further than this, a lot more quickly. And so you're saying, well, is this really about the people? Is this really about the implementation? Is this really about the enforcement of this law? Or is it clear on its face and you are just wanting to put up obstacles to make sure that you don't have all these new voters who might be voting for the other party? We need to understand, given the history of this country, given the history of disenfranchisement, you better have a very good reason for anything that limits the ability for people to vote. Because the history shows that that's done in a way that has really held people back. People have fought and died for the right to vote. If you have a reason to hold people or limit their ability to do that, it better be a very good and clear reason. And when you have an amendment where 65% of the people voted to change that law to make sure that more people were had franchise, then you come back and you're just kind of bringing up new stuff. That is problematic. And I think a lot of the advocates have a good point in that regard. So keep your eye out for that. It's something that we need to make sure gets adjudicated, or whatever you want to call it, litigated in the right way, and making sure that we're going into these conversations with good faith. Again, thank you for listening. If you like what you hear on these civic updates, I'm telling you, you need to listen to the Church Politics Podcast with myself and Michael Ware, where we talk about these issues and more every week. The AND campaign is trying to be a resource for you. We want you to be informed. We want you to be educated. We want you to be up on what's going on in society and in the civic space. Thanks for joining me. Take care.